Good morning, everyone. I know this is part of a long series of events in your orientation. Just a few days ago, I was here with my older son, who is a senior in high school. I'm so used to saying junior. He was last year. Now he's a senior in high school. And usually when I come here and I see all those people moving in, I go, oh my God, where am I going to park? 2 days ago, I was almost crying, thinking this is going to be us next year. So you're probably going through a lot right now. We're adding a lecture, and we're hoping that this will be a little bit of a foretaste for what you are going to get here when you come to Duquesne. And you will see that it is a theological lecture because I teach in the theology department. But what I'm going to talk about is, what does it mean to be a human being? I'm going to do that by referring to the faces of Jesus, because oftentimes when we look at other human beings, we see what we find in our neighborhoods, what we find in our high schools. But when you come here to Duquesne, you see some very different faces maybe. And here is a picture from the Center for African Studies that we have here at Duquesne. They went in 2014 in Ghana. And you notice that most students do not look alike. The question will be, theologically, what does that say about being a human being? So here at Duquesne, we're hoping that you are going to encounter humanity at its best. And when we say at its best, we mean, among other things, that it has a global dimension. Here it is, a professor who was born and raised in Romania, in communist Romania, as a matter of fact. And most of you know about Romania as being the country of Dracula, right? That's because you had access growing up to Western novels. Growing up in communism, I was not allowed to read novels from Western countries, so I never heard of Dracula growing up. It was when I came to the United States in 1999 that for the first time somebody told me that I come from the country of Dracula. Until that, I didn't know it. I was born and raised there. My first son is born there in Romania as well. But then I came to the United States and I traveled the world. I have seen many beautiful places, some of which I'm going to share with you today. And when you see that, it challenges the way you think about what it means to be a human being, both from a secular perspective and from a religious perspective. I'm mentioning the religious perspective because I teach classes in theology. But that does not mean that when a student steps into my classroom, I assume that they are Catholic. I myself am not Catholic. Did you notice there are a lot of people who are not Catholics here? But if you're not Catholic, I do hope that you will get the chance, like most of us do, to respect the Catholic Church, because these people are giving you this education because of their faith. I do not even assume that the person stepping into my classroom is Christian. I do not assume they read the Bible. I do not assume they know how to open a Bible. The first thing I teach my students is that the Bible is divided into books, chapters, verses. This is how you find it. We start from zero. But then we take it to significant heights. So faith is a personal decision. I do not take it for granted. But I look at the human being, both from a secular and a faith perspective. From a faith perspective, which is what I'm going to focus on, and being a Christian, I believe that God became a human being. That happened in the person of Jesus, who was truly God and truly human. And when I say that he was truly human, like us, in all things apart from sin, I'm thinking that my model of humanity is Jesus Christ. You know how oftentimes people ask you, who's your idol? Katy Perry. Really nice one, right? I mean, I listen to all the music my kids listen to. No discrimination. So, Katy Perry, Eminem, whoever it is, Bruno Mars, this is my idol. Good for you. When people ask me, who's your idol? Theologically, I'm having a hard time saying idol because there's a commandment that says do not have idols. But anyway, I answer it and I say, Jesus Christ. This is the ideal of humanity as I see it. But then I'm also wondering, what is humanity from a Christian perspective? And so, when you look at this painting by Da Vinci, and by the way, I saw it myself when I lived in Italy for 3 months. Did you know as a Duquesne student you can live in Italy for 3 months? Have all that good food, drink wine legally, visit all these beautiful places, take classes with some of the brightest minds who are taking you to these places and showing you how Michelangelo painted the Sistine Chapel. And they will tell you that if you look there in the middle of that painting, there's a space. And that's where you put the most important part of your painting, right? In the middle. And there's a space. And it means that there is a gap between God and humankind when God created Adam. But that gap, from a Christian perspective, was then covered, was filled, when God became a human being in Jesus Christ. And when he became a human being, he was just like all of us. Here he is portrayed as a 12-year-old kid. And some of you who know the Bible might know that he ran away. Literally, and I wish I were kidding you, as a father, I am terrified. The greatest worry that a father can feel is to say, I lost my kid at the mall. It never happened to me, but once I lost my dog. It's the closest I came to that, and it was terrifying. Our dog's name is Fudge because he's a chocolate lab. I would have named him Duke because here at Duquesne we have the Dukes, and I graduated from Duke, but my son was second grade when he named him, so he said it's a chocolate lab, so his name should be Fudge. There we go. So, his parents, 3 days later, found him. Again, it was terrifying. So do you see the mother embracing her son, being so happy because she lost her son and now she found him? As students, you probably resonate a little bit with that. I'm not with my parents anymore. Right? Are you still at that stage where you're happy about that? Still? Raise your hand if you're happy you're not at home anymore. There we go. The others are liars. All of you are happy. I know you. I've been a student. Shame on you. Liars. 2 weeks from now, there will be no hands up because all of you are going to be crying, I want my mommy. I want my daddy. I know you do because you love them. That's a beautiful thing. Well, here is Jesus in the temple. His mother finally finds him, and she's so happy. Do you like this painting? Yeah? All right, now I want you to look at the color of Jesus' hair. What color is it? Red. His eyes? Blue. How many of you have seen people from the Middle East who have red curly hair and blue eyes? None of you. So all I need to do is to tell you a little story about mom losing her child. Look how beautiful it is. And nobody notices there's something about this picture. Jesus has blue eyes and red curly hair. Why? Because this is the Irish Jesus. Nothing wrong with it if you're Irish. Or you want to be Irish. Because God became what? A human being. And some human beings look like that, correct? So that's how God became. But other human beings look like that. Who is this? Jesus. That's the from the continent of Africa. This one is the young African-American Jesus. God became a human being. That's how human beings look like, correct? This is a picture I took myself when I traveled to India. And here in the United States, when I pray, I usually go like that, right? If you're in India, you don't pray like that. How do you pray? In the lotus position. So he's blessing people like this, but he stays in, I'm 42 years old, I cannot do the lotus position, sorry. But he stays in the lotus position, because this is how people pray there. So when you say God became a human being, this is what you mean. If you're a person from China, where this painting is coming from, and you're saying Jesus ate the Last Supper with his disciples, now you would assume he was a polite man, and he had good table manners. So what does he use when he eats the Last Supper? Do you notice? Chopsticks. Ever seen an icon where Jesus uses chopsticks at the Last Supper? You haven't. unless you come from that part of the world. Why? Because God became a human being, and that's what it means to be a human being. You saw the painting of Virgin Mary and Jesus. Here she is again from Korea, also in one of them with John the Baptist. Let's go in other parts of the world. This is how people represent those whom they love. And this is Virgin Mary and Jesus. I myself, I told you I am Eastern Orthodox. This is why I can talk to you about my children, right? We Orthodox priests are married. There's a wedding band right here. You know, see? There's a wedding band. She said yes. 20 years ago. Yes. So, in the Eastern Orthodox tradition, this is how we depict Jesus. This is in Hagia Sophia in Constantinople. As an Orthodox, I don't say Istanbul, I say Constantinople, even though since 1453, really, it's Istanbul. So, Jesus Christ in Constantinople. But then, last summer, I traveled to Hong Kong to give a paper at the conference, and this is how in the Orthodox Church, a Byzantine style, although clearly Chinese Jesus, looks like. And on his gospel, you see written there with Cantonese characters, and you see that he looks different compared to the one in Hagia Sophia. Now, I apologize for the next cartoon. There are some elements in this one that I don't condone, but I still thought it was funny. That's the Buddha and Jesus. That's the moment where you're supposed to laugh. No? So, Jesus is upset here that for about 2,000 years, he has been portrayed as a blonde, white dude. Dude is my second favorite English word. That's one of the reasons I have it, plus it's also theological. If he's not a blonde, white dude, what was he? Here's a painting by Chagall that depicts Jesus as, look at his clothes. I was wondering why all the people are looking away from me. There's a TV screen there. Now I get it. Okay, this is not personal anymore. Thank you. Do you see him as Jewish? News for you. Jesus was born in Bethlehem, not Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, Bethlehem in Palestine, Israel. I actually visited the place where, according to tradition, he has been born. And you also see here how many of his people, nationally speaking, ethnically speaking, are being persecuted by those who worshipped Jesus during the Nazi regime. And if he's not a blonde, white dude, but he became a human being, perhaps we should also portray him as Christa. Do you notice the gender of the person being crucified here? Yes? Female. Because in the creed, Christians say, for us, human beings, and for our salvation, he became human. In many English translations, we say, for us men, and for our salvation, he became man. But it's a mistranslation when you look at the original Greek, and then even its translation into Latin, it's us human beings. So yes, women, the humanity that you find in Jesus Christ is the humanity of a woman. And here you see the cross being transparent because it wants you to focus on the one being crucified, on the victim, the one who has suffered. And so, you would conclude that according to a Christian tradition, Jesus is always on the side of the oppressed. But historically, that's not how we looked at it. Here he is depicted clearly as the King of Kings, a warrior. Now think about it. Every time you turn on the TV and the politicians for whom you vote are talking about God, do they believe or do they not believe? Oh, yes, they believe. What do you think about that? That's going to be a question that you're going to ask yourselves. What is Christianity? What is being a human person according to a Christian faith? And does everybody else represent it? And I'm not going to give you a yes or no answer because the answer is different. All the pictures I showed you are true pictures. Jesus is truly a Chinese Jesus. Jesus is truly a Korean Jesus. Jesus is truly an Indian Jesus. Jesus is truly a Jewish Jesus. Jesus is truly an Irish Jesus. All of these, truly a male, truly a female. All of these. One thing that hopefully you will give up when you come to Duquesne is to think that all questions have clear yes and no answers. And that's not the case. Now, I told you that I spent 3 months in Rome as a professor there on the Italian campus. And oftentimes I ask students, do you all know what the Colosseum is? And most people would raise their hands. I was in Rome, and I asked, who here has visited the Colosseum? Everybody, the whole class, raised their hands. It's a really cool thing if you're a professor. And I told them, did you notice there's a cross there in the middle? Do you all see it? Can you all see the cross? That's the place where the Roman emperor used to sit. He was watching all these gladiators fight in his name, and sometimes gladiators would kill Christians. Most of the persecutions did not happen here in the Colosseum, but it happened. And so here was the emperor from that specific place looking at the followers of Jesus being killed. And now what do you see in the place where the Roman emperor stood? The cross. And so it makes you ask yourself, what does it mean to have authority? What does it mean to have power if things like that are happening? And who has true power and true authority? As a matter of fact, not just over the Roman Empire, but that's a painting in Pisa. You know where the Leaning Tower is? By the way, great injustice. There's a church, there's a baptisterium there, they're really beautiful, and everybody's looking at the Tower of Pisa. It's really wrong. And by the way, all people are taking funny pictures like this, you know, like they're leaning on it, and you're looking from the front, and it makes sense. But I took, just for the fun of it, I took pictures from a side of crazy people doing stuff like that. Because it matters from where you're looking at things. You look at them from the right angle, it makes sense. But how many times do you look at things and say, it makes no sense, because you're looking at them from the wrong angle? Go into the right angle. Here it says that Jesus is the master of the universe. You have there the angels, the signs of the zodiac. You have the stars. You have the earth. And it's also saying that it's not good for us to be alone. Especially this first year, there will be times when you're going to say, I'm lonely. Not just alone because I want to be by myself, but lonely. And you'll find yourself in a room filled with people, and yet lonely. And it hurts. You know why? Because that's not how we're made. We're made to have friends. We're made to love each other. We're made to be with one another. That's also how God is from a Christian perspective. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, one God. You'll also notice that sometimes people do really bad things. Hopefully not your fellow students. Hopefully not you. Because, from a Christian perspective, we inherit a fallen human nature. We inherit a nature where little boys do not play peace. What do they play? War. And you do not have video games where people go and hug each other after they fought, but you have video games where you say, yes, it's a red bloody screen. Because we inherit a fallen human nature. And that fallen human nature, which you see to your right, brings destruction. But you're called to have a different human nature, like the ideal of human nature, the one that gives life, the one that nourishes others, the one that supports each other, especially when people are worried and lonely and sad. Do you see in this painting by Munch how all the worries of humankind converge, and how all human beings are transformed except for the ones who are looking away, except for the ones who are laughing at suffering? But if you have compassion for others, especially for the victim, you are changed. And that victim does not have to have a face. Do you notice? There are no facial features. That victim, it doesn't matter their gender. Do you notice? It's not exactly gender specific here. But that victim is someone with whom you can identify. And this is why Christ came to show. And this refers to people of all nationalities, from all places. It refers to animals, it refers to plants, it refers to the entire creation. So let me zoom in a little bit into this one, and I need your help, because I never get a straight answer. You all notice the animals, you all notice the plants, right? How about the dude all the way to the right? By show of hands, is that Michael Jackson or Bruno Mars? Michael Jackson. Bruno Mars. Bruno Mars it is. With features of Michael Jackson, just a little bit. So, I told you that here when you come to Duquesne, you'll encounter humanity, but hopefully it's a humanity that is beyond your own. It's a global type of humanity. It has a global dimension, and you'll realize you're a citizen of the world. You're encountering the other as the other, without doing violence to who they are. You look at them from the wrong angle, and they seem crazy people who are just leaning like that in the air. You look at them from the right angle, they're leaning on the Tower of Pisa. You think that Jesus is only the Irish Jesus. No, he's also eating the Last Supper with chopsticks. So do not do violence to people's identity by imposing on them what you think they are. Encounter them as they truly are. In the person of Jesus the Christ, from a Christian perspective, God became a human being, which means that you are involved in relationships that transcend our own individuality. The theme here is weaving threads, right? The whole orientation. This shows very clearly. Moreover, he's an ideal of humanity. And he calls to service. He calls not for your own gain, but to give your life for the others, to take on the worries of others, to stand with the victim, to be with those who are oppressed. And believe me, I've been working for a while on this presentation because Dr. Roberts told me that I was going to speak to 1,700 people only recently. Before that, I thought I'm speaking to 100 people. And since then, I've been really, really scared. You're not scary. I shouldn't have been. But when I started writing this presentation, little did I know that less than a week ago, people would be shamelessly marching our cities with Christian symbols. Shouting racial slogans, racist slogans, white supremacists, just speaking how they think. Anti-Semitic slogans on the streets of our cities. Little did I know when I was writing this presentation how relevant it would be to show you a Jesus from Africa, a Jesus who's a young African American, a crucified Jewish young man in the painting by Chagall, and all the other ones that I've shown you. So from a Christian perspective, solidarity, speaking of the truth, becomes an imperative. And so when we are saying that you are a citizen of the world, whether you have faith in Christianity or not, you notice that what I showed you does not all presuppose that you have a Christian faith. What I talked about also resonates with your idea of what it means to be a human being at its best. If you are a Christian, you believe that Jesus is humanity at its best. And you look at his humanity and you see it made out of all these little pictures. Do you notice the portraits in the painting? So when you look at the face of Jesus, it has many, many, many different faces. One of them is yours. One of them belongs to your roommate. One of them belongs to the person down the hall who's hogging the dishwasher. But the question will be, where do I fit? How can I serve? Where can I find the other? Where is humanity at its best? Thank you.